Hello guys, I'm 6 and welcome back to a brand new video, where today we're back with round 5 of the AC SRS Tumilty's 90's BTCC Championship here at Croft. Back in the BMW, as per usual, and Croft is a track that I quite like. It's one that I really haven't driven as much as I would have liked to, but it's a track that I do quite enjoy. I have raced it before and it has brought me some success, and it's been a lot of fun doing it. It's a pretty flat track. There's not really much in terms of elevation changes, but it's a very fast and flowy track. It is quite small as well. So actually, unironically, whilst I do feel this is a pretty fast track, I actually ran the shortest gearing ratio that I did out of all the races this season. As I know, obviously going to Brands Hatch next week, I'll have to bump it up again. So this is the shortest. You know, it's the lowest in terms of top speed, but the average speed for a lap, I'd say, is pretty quick, unless you, I guess if you exclude the final sector there, it's because that is pretty slow. But yeah, Croft is a fun track. It doesn't leave much room for error like a lot of tracks in this championship. So it's one that you can run on the edge, but you can't run over the edge, as then you'll end up in disaster. Now, one problem with this track mod, though, is a great track. It's really well done, but the track limits, my goodness, are they hilariously strict. If you put more than 2 wheels off the road at any point, just 2 wheels off the road anywhere on the track, or more than 2 wheels off the road, should I say, sorry, anywhere off the track, that is a immediate 10-second time penalty. Obviously, we know Assetto Corsa's penalty system is terrible, and so having a penalty system, or like track limits restrictions this harsh for this track, it's just kind of ridiculous. Yeah, the excuse you could say is, well, just keep all 4 wheels on the track, and while yeah, that's something that I could do, it is a little bit frustrating that you can't just go a little bit wide and get away with it, sort of thing, you know, because you're not gaining any time. You know, in a lot of these instances, you're losing a load of time, but then you still have to serve a penalty on top, which is just kind of ridiculous. But other than that, track mod's great. It really suits this car combo. And yeah, let's jump into qualifying. Okay, so yeah, starting off with qualifying. Qualifying's not going to get off to the greatest of starts because I'm going to get going immediately. And typically what I do is I get going immediately and try and work my way into a gap. But because of the size of Croft, I really wasn't able to sort of weasel my way into a bit of a gap. And that's kind of going to lead to the bit of a kerfuffle on the sort of outlap of cars tripping over each other, me getting sort of involved in the mix. I ended up just deciding to park the car on the gravel, go back to the pits and try again. This was actually pretty good because it put me out into a bit of clean air. But a bit later on, I almost made contact with a car that spun. I think I actually did make very light contact with that car, and which would give me a little bit of damage for the rest of my first qualifying stint, which wasn't really optimal. But you know, it is what it is. I wasn't really expected to be there and made a bit of a mistake, so yeah. But yeah, so my pace was actually a lot better than what I was expecting it to be in qualifying, and was actually eventually able to crack a P6 result overall by the end of qualifying, which I will walk you through the lap now. Alright, so as we come here into the final hairpin, gonna break down into second gear, not first, lightly cruise on that throttle, then begin to reapply it, making sure the car doesn't go off the track, but then start bringing it back over to the left here as we come to start a brand new lap. And we're going to keep it over to the left, full throttle, into 6th gear, wait for those markers on the left, break down into 4th, turn it in all over that curb, hang it out over there a little bit, straight line it down into 3rd. Try and keep it as much on the inside as we can, but we also want to be on the throttle, so we're going to hold it down, accelerate, cut as much as we can get away with through that chicane whilst keeping it fully flat on the throttle. Hang it out to the right a little bit here. Then this little left swing, going to move over to the left, get ready for the braking point, find our markers, brake down into 3rd gear. Going to try and hold a nice pace along the inside line, get on the throttle as soon as we can on the exit. It's very bumpy there, so it can cause some issues. Back over to the right, Then we're going to get ready to swing over to the left. Keep on our foot flat on the throttle. All the way through this to the right. Out a little bit here. Make a full use of that track there we can use. Just missing the curb there, but we're going to then brake down here. Very hard braking point, easy to lose it. Into third, over the curb, tail rotation, out onto the outer curb there to use all the track width. Back over to the inner, back over to the outer, and back over to the right-hand side of the track to brake down here. Down into third, keeping it nice and tucked in. Maybe could have stayed in fourth there, but whatever. Braking down into second for here, keeping it nice and tight to get on the throttle as soon as we can to have the most speed through into here. Braking down into second, slowest turn on the track. And we're going to then power back out of here to then come across the line and finish the lap. Alright, okay, here we are, starting P6, top place to BMW. Only Primeras ahead, which is actually going to prove to be a good thing, as once the lights go out, I'm going to launch, and I'm going to make perfect use of the BMW's better launch to jump these three cars here actually up into second from 6th. But I'm actually going to have to give up the inside here because he was there. And I'm going to settle into P3. Gonna keep my nose clean for here. Hold the inner line through here so nobody can really challenge it. And there's actually a couple of wrecks that happen behind which do affect some pretty major contenders for this race, which is a shame, but you know, I was lucky enough to be able to avoid them. Currently got a little bit of pressure behind though. Stuart is behind me in another Primera. Currently chomping away at my heels a little bit. Not too much, but it is something that I was being a little bit wary of. But at the minute, I'm fine being in P3. I know I don't have the faster car, so I'm just hoping to make the best I can. Here, he's going to get really messed up on the brakes, and I'm going to lock my brakes in as a result. And that's going to allow Stuart to close in a lot here, which is going to come to full effect here. As you'll see, I'll hang over to the left a little bit to sort of cover off the inside. He's going to go onto the out. And he's actually going to lose those rear underneath here and go into that tyre barrier to my left. Unfortunate, because that ended his day, pretty much. But it works out for me, as it's now left a nice gap behind me, and my only two cars I need to worry about are the two cars that are ahead of me, and just trying to stay as close as I can to them, as we're going to end off lap 1 in P3, having gained 3 places, all before turn 1. Jumping ahead of it, you're going to see Joel ahead. He's going to run wide and pick himself up a penalty. That means that Birchie is going to challenge him for the lead, and they're going to go side by side for it, which is pretty cool stuff. I've been able to hold on pace. You know, we're around about halfway into the race at this point. I've been able to hold pretty close pace with them. They've had a couple of attempts on me per lap. But, yeah, Joel's going to seize the lead, but obviously he's got that penalty to deal with. I would have just pulled over here and served the penalty before the hairpin, but he's going to wait till the exit of the hairpin and kind of clumsily brake into P2 there. I don't think it was intentional, but, you know, not really what you want to do. So here I am now up into P2. I'm going to have a little bit of a run here, but it's not really going to materialize into anything, as the Primera is the faster car down the straights. And so I'm just going to keep in behind here in P2. You know, I'm not really going to take any risks that I don't need to here, given again that, you know, I am sort of punching above this BMW's weight, fighting amongst these Primeras. All I can really hope to do is just hold the quickest pace I can and not have that be interrupted by anything. Now, okay, we're going to jump ahead of the lap, and Joel has caught me up. I have lost a bit of lead there. I'm going to hold the inside line here, and I'm going to absolutely ruin my braking. Drop the rear, which is going to allow Joel to go around the inside. I'm going to lock down the car and just about avoid a penalty. I was so lucky to avoid a penalty here, it's not even funny. But yeah, I was able to carry on. I've lost a lot of time, but as you can see from the map, the amount of time us three had pulled to the rest of the field was quite a margin, so it really wasn't much of a problem. You know, I just sort of picked myself up and kept on going. But from here on out, this is pretty much where the race ends for me. Nothing much really happens from here. As I said, the Primera was, or is, the faster car overall. They had about 2 to 3 attempts on me per lap. And that was an advantage I tried to sort of mitigate as hard as I could throughout this race. And I'd say at least I think I did a pretty reasonable job with it. Up until that incident, I was relatively close. Them two ended up having a pretty good battle until the end. I think Birchie ended up beating out Joel right at the end. So good on them, you know. It's always good to have some fun racing. I kind of ended up getting stuck in no man's land, but I was happy to take home a nice clean podium position after, you know, the disappointment at Silverstone and the disappointment at Thruxton. You know, both of those were my own doing, but it was good to finally, you know, push myself back up into a good podium finish after those two. Just to kind of be like, hey, look, you know, you still got some pace. But yeah, I think pushing that hard for the whole race kind of eventually took its toll towards the end of the race, as my tyres were not happy with me. I had been running consistent 124s pretty much the whole race, and it reached a point where the tyres began to drop off, and I then ended up dropping into the 125s towards the end, whilst the Primeras ahead still kept banging out 124s. So that sort of compounded my losses a little bit, but yeah, you know, there wasn't really much I could have done with the tyre situation. Maybe if I was involved in an active battle, I might have been going a bit quicker. I'm not sure, but, you know, I had enough of a margin back to P3 for it not to be a problem. And actually, to talk about that podium, there was another BMW driver behind me who held P4 for most of the race. He was actually pulled off a great defensive drive, and I have to say, he was probably the MVP here, because were it not for him, he would have unleashed Michael and Tim, who have been rapid in previous races, onto me, and I likely would have had to have fought them off for the race. Michael was able to overtake him before the end of the race and take P4, but he was too far back at that point to realistically catch me before the end of the race, as we were sort of putting in similar lap times by that point, because obviously they'd had a bit more fighting, so they'd put a bit more wear into their car, because I think there was a couple of knocks and stuff. But yeah, you know, ultimately it's a good result here at Croft, and one that I hope to carry forward into Brands Hatch, which will be the finale. Points wise, I'm currently sat in P3, very close between second, third and fourth, and yeah, I'm very unlikely I'm going to take the title, but I think P2 is very much on the cards if I can do well enough. If not, keep and hold of P3. I think that'll be a good result for my first ever SRS championship. But yeah, that's it for this video. If you did enjoy, like you appreciate it. If you're new, subscribe, very appreciate it as well. And I guess that's it for now. Goodbye.